Hello to our viewers and welcome to our breakdown of UFC Fight Night Abu Dhabi, Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov. We have an exciting card here from Abu Dhabi this Saturday. The card beginning at noon here in the States, but the main card to be broadcast live on ABC with some fantastic fights from the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. Nick, joining me as always. How do you feel about this fight card that we are about to dissect?
Yeah, I mean, those folks over in Abu Dhabi got a lot of money, so when Dana's putting on cards for them, they've been solid, top to bottom. A lot of good fights here. But yeah, looking at the lines, I think a lot of the right guys are favored, but I don't know. It's like the value is on a lot of the underdogs, which makes it interesting. So definitely a lot to talk about here. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Another really solid card, top to bottom, in terms of quality.
All right. We will, yeah, I certainly agree. And we will begin with, one of those fights you sort of speak on here in the main event, bantamweight matchup between Umar Nurmagomedov and Corey Sandhagen. At this point in the week, Nurmagomedov favored minus 340 to Sandhagen, who could be had at plus 260. It's a very interesting fight. I think Nurmagomedov is obviously has the trajectory to continue climbing the ranks here at bantamweight. This may be the fight that propels him to a title shot, if not one more fight, next. But all that we've seen out of him thus far, it seems like he is the real deal. Nurmagomedov, very sophisticated a striker on the feet. But obviously, the difference between him and Corey Sandhagen will be effective grappling. Nurmagomedov isn't known quite as much as of his teammates for the offensive wrestling. However, he does average 1.5 takedowns landed per round in his short UFC career. Um, if able to take down Sandhagen, I see Nurmagomedov having a lot of success in this fight, but otherwise, it's going to be very competitive on the feet. I mean, I like what I've seen out of Nurmagomedov, but Corey Sandhagen, really against any bantamweight on the planet, it's kind of hard to say he's a 3-1 underdog. Just what Sandhagen's able to do on the feet with his feints, his elusiveness. Nurmagomedov has 69% striking accuracy in the UFC, but a lot of that's a product of his effective ground strikes landing and his ability to kind of control opponents. So, again, if this is going to divulge into a kickboxing match, if he's going to play at range for a prolonged period with Sandhagen's as live as anyone, getting a juicy plus number here. I just feel with Habib in his corner, Umar sort of following father's plan. He's going to secure a couple takedowns here, and it's going to put Corey in some dangerous situations when Nurmagomedov's threatening on his back. I'll also just add the past two fights for Sandhagen, he's scored multiple takedowns. His wrestling has been, kind of coming to the light. Again, that's based on stylistic matchups, and he really won't have the opportunity to shoot for takedowns here. It just wouldn't surprise me as well if he's able to fight out of some of these sub attempts or deep, takedowns landed by Nurmagomedov. But yeah, I lean the way of the favorite here, although I'm expecting a very good fight.
Yeah, man, this one's tough. And like I said at the start of this video, there's a lot of guys I think should be favored, but maybe the lines are a little bit too wide. Kind of agree with you here, and that's the case for Sandhagen. I mean, my initial lean is actually on Corey. I'm going to spend more time on this one. Usually we have these fights on these videos where we're like, check out the article on Saturday. Usually it's not the main event where we're kind of making that declaration. For me, I'm a big fan of Sandhagen, but I also really do respect Umar. I just question what the 5 rounds of Umar Nurmagomedov is going to look like. Coming off that fight against Bezkat Almakan, who took that fight on short notice, it did seem Umar's start to fade a little bit towards the end of that one. I don't think he's going to have a cardio issue, but Corey, we know, trains at elevation, definitely a strength of his. He tends to get better as his fights wear on. So I think Umar's going to look really good early here, but can he sustain it for 25 minutes? It's hasn't been done by him before, so it's definitely a question that I have that I'm hoping we get answered here. On the feet, super interesting. Sandhagen, obviously an excellent striker. Umar definitely one of the better strikers from that Khabib camp. Lands nearly 5 significant strikes per minute, absorbing less than zero point 0.6 significant strikes per minute. But big point I'm going to make here is that the level of competition hasn't been anywhere near what Sandhagen's been facing. Coming off that fight in which he did wrestle a lot against Rob Font, he tore his tricep in the first round. I think that is why we saw such a heavy wrestling game plan from him, but it did work. Corey's super gritty fighter. I mean, we saw in the Dillashaw fight, a fight I thought he got robbed in. We saw in Peter Yan fight when Yan was killing everyone. I mean, really competitive matchup. Corey definitely lost that one, but gave a great showing of himself. And now he's coming off surgery. When we talk about Khabib being in the corner of Umar, we now have Trevor Whitman for the first time in the corner of Corey Sandhagen. Now that he's no longer focusing on Rose, Usman's much less active than he was when he was a champion. Obviously, Gaethje not super active these days either. Kind of open up some free time for Whitman to get into the corner of Sandhagen and really hone in on him as he has with those three in the past. And yeah, those three have all really climbed to the top of the mountain. I mean, Gaethje, interim champion, the other two champions. Not saying that Whitman's just going to suddenly put Corey on the level where he needs to be to win a title, but we have heard Dana White say this is a number one contender match. So whoever wins this fight probably gets the winner of Marab and O'Malley next. But yeah, I mean, I do think Umar, because of the wrestling, because Corey only has a 64% takedown defense, is the rightful favorite. But at this number, I mean, I'm having trouble not just going with Sandhagen here on the value side and thinking, hey, he's also fought in Abu Dhabi before. He's very comfortable over here. Whitman is a genius, as is Khabib, but I think that kind of levels things out in terms of the coaching. But yeah, just so many questions around Umar and what he's going to look like. We do see these guys take major steps up when they do have this championship pedigree. I mean, we saw with O'Malley going from what? Who did he fight before Peter Young? Pedro Munoz, and that fight was a mess. But I mean, before that, he was taking on unranked opponents. I mean, this is that type of leap that we're seeing from Umar here. We look at the last name, and it just kind of tells you what the UFC thinks of him, that he's getting this matchup. And the other reason I'm not super confident in taking Sandhagen as an underdog is just because this fight fell apart and they put it back together. Usually when the UFC does that, it's for a good reason. And Sandhagen likes to say that the fight with O'Malley would be one of the biggest that the UFC can make. But I heard a few others making this point today, I think DC included. An even bigger fight is probably Umar O'Malley. I mean, both of them would be undefeated in the UFC. Umar, actually, no, O'Malley lost to Chino, but
Both
regardless, Umar would be
undefeated.
undefeated. Yeah, you know what I mean. I mean, it's a bigger fight. I mean, just because there are parallels to the McGregor Khabib days, obviously very different fighters, but I think both of those areas would get up for that fight. So I think either way, the UFC is going to be able to sell the bantamweight title as long as O'Malley wins. And I don't know. I think either way, the winner of this fight is probably taking on the winner of that. And I don't know. Technically, it's just so interesting because Sandhagen is as heady and cerebral as anyone. I mean, Umar definitely has a high fight IQ, but the Barcelos KO, like, that was weird. That was a weird jab. Like, I don't want to look too deeply into that. Sandhagen has been super durable. I think it's going to be competitive on the feet, but it's going to be a question of how often he's grappling and how Corey looks. Not if he's taken, or not only will he be taken down, I think he will be, but how he's going to work back to his feet. Obviously, the worst loss of his career came against Sterling in a fight where he was just ground to the mat and immediately submitted. You have to imagine he's greatly improved on that part of his game since then, that being several years ago now. So again, I need to spend more time on this one, and I'm happy to do it. The film on both these guys is really fun to watch. Right now, I'm leaning Sandhagen. Not a confident play. I just think he's the value side, especially where you're seeing numbers as high as plus 250, plus 260 across the books.
Yeah, and I definitely can't fault you with that pick. I was leaning the way of Sandhagen, sort of heading into fight week here. And yeah, I think definitely either one who wins here is certainly going to put themselves in position to fight next for the bantamweight championship. But should be a very good fight. In our main event, same case in the co-main event. A fight at middleweight between Sharabutin Magomedov and Michel Olajaychek. Magomedov, a minus 250 favorite in this spot. Only a few weeks after his last performance, beating Antonio Trocoli. Not the craziest showing. A lot of folks, in the MMA world have been quick to criticize Magomedov after his two UFC performances being a bit lackluster, maybe not saying he's the as high level of a fighter as he was billed. Um, but I really like what I've seen. I mean, it's high level striking. He's putting on a great display. He's entertaining fans, and he's still dismantling his opponent. What we've seen out of Shaw, good fight IQ, and obviously what he's able to do with that lead leg, not only to control distance but also to go after and attack his opponents. Um, I'm really expecting a very good performance from Magomedov here. I think the holes that we've seen of his game are going to be exploited as he fights upper echelon competition here at middleweight. But Olajaychuk isn't that. He's been finished inside of the first 2 minutes of both of his previous UFC performances, and has honestly had quite a streak of finishes in his past several fights. I think his aggressive nature is going to bring out some of the best in Magomedov here. And as these two exchange in the first and second round, someone's going to be going out early. Ola Jacek has very poor ground game, and this is going to be a fight contested in that kickboxing realm. Perhaps he wants to try and attempt a takedown against Magomedov, but really we'll most likely see these two exchanging. Ola Jacek looking to land the one big shot, and Magomedov putting on a show with his striking. I really think he should have the edge here over Olajaychuk. I'm not going to look to fade him until he fights like a real wrestler, someone with a more complete skill set.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those who hasn't been as impressed by Shara as maybe I was hoping to be. I mean, the guy definitely looks the part. He's got one eye. He's kind of a scary looking dude. Did just get booked for a movie role. He was over in Hollywood, so probably not the most extensive camp for this fight. But it does feel like the UFC's setting him up to win here. I mean, Ola Jacek coming off a tough loss to Kevin Holland, in which some felt he maybe broke his arm. He insists he didn't. Looked pretty damn bad at the time, though. And both these guys taking this fight about a month after their last result. And while Ola Jacek's chin isn't necessarily terrible, he can be hurt to the body. I think that's probably where Shara gets him here. But yeah, I mean, this is an Abu Dhabi card. This is a guy who they're definitely trying to promote to that side of the world. There's a reason he's the co-main event here. He's undefeated. And yeah, I mean, Bruno Silva, his first fight in the UFC, that being Shara, not the toughest matchup, but I actually rate him pretty similarly to Michael here. And yeah, I mean, Mikhail's a little bit small for the weight class, so I do favor Shara here. But yeah, man, I mean, the price, again, I mean, on a lot of these favors is kind of getting out of hand. I mean, we're seeing 275 at some books, minus 250 across most. Going to be tough for me to get excited about playing him at this number or parlaying him or anything like that. I'll have to see what the inside the distance looks like. I do think he probably gets it done um, before the end of 3 rounds. And it is worth bringing up too. Someone commented on the picture, I think, of Ola Jacek signing the contract for this fight. Like, if you lose, would you go to KSW or something like that? He's like, if I lose, and I probably will, I'm done with this sport or something, it was said. And I don't know if he's trolling. I mean, you and I were both fooled by Alexander Volkov in a spot a few weeks ago when he took on Sergey Pavlovich. Maybe we're getting some of the same here from Mikhail, and he's just kind of messing with people. But yeah, to me, that's kind of a red flag, and not that I needed a red flag to back Chikari here. I do think he's overrated, but I do think this is the type of matchup he should win. I mean, the Chitty win for Mikhail was nice. He was getting beat up in that fight, though. Other than that, I mean, his UFC wins are pretty mediocre. Guys like Cody Brundage, Sam Alvey, etc. So I'm on Shara here. Not loving the price. Maybe try to take a prop. Maybe try to guess which round he can get it done in. But yeah, I do think he gets it done here in front of a crowd that should definitely be in his corner.
Yeah, I'll just comment on the price. I think 250 is fair. I think Kevin Holland was probably 250, 260 at close when he had faced Oral J check. So maybe in that aspect, not
He dropped
equitable.
Holland
But yeah,
bad.
yeah, no, that's true. Right into an armbar. But yeah, Magomed, I'll probably play at this number. Another reason maybe for my Umar pick, Nurmagomedov parlay to end the night. What's better than that? But yeah, I do like the inside prop as well. For sure, a bullet. Something honestly, after watching his last couple performances, maybe not many people will be rushing to bet. But again, just the style of fight we normally see from Olajaychuk, I can't see this going more than 10 minutes. Um, should be a very good fight, though. And we will now look at the featured bout coming at bantamweight with Marlon Vera taking on Davison Figueiredo. Figueiredo now a minus 150 favorite in this spot, facing Vera, coming off a title loss. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Which way are you leaning?
Yeah, this is super interesting. I think my initial lean's Figueredo. Another fight. I hate to have these so high up the card that I want to spend a little bit more time on. But yeah, pretty short week for us getting back from vacation last week. But yeah, I think I like Figgy here just because I don't know. If it was a 5 round fight, I'd definitely favor Cheeto. But he's been a slow starter. Even in his fight against Munoz that he won, slow starter there. And he talks about how he's going to come out firing now. He said the big issue for him is that he doesn't usually train in the back room, and he's going to start doing that now, so he comes out hot. I don't know if that's going to be enough for him to really get going early here. And what we've seen from Figueredo lately is a very heavy grappling game plan. I think moving up a weight class, he's more confident in his gas tank, kind of leading on that part of his game. And yeah, I mean, Vera, decent jujitsu, but he has been relatively easy to take down. I mean, even going back to a guy like Frankie Edgar, who was, I think, one of the last fights of his career, taking Vera down easily time and time again. I do think Figgy has enough strength to do that here. And I think he could do well in striking exchanges as well. Both these guys pretty durable. I don't really see Vera knocking Figgy out or vice versa. I mean, Vera obviously coming off that fight with O'Malley, where he ate a ton of shots, including that massive knee to the head that would have knocked out almost anyone in this division. So yeah, I think if there is a finish, it probably comes on the mat. I think this probably goes to decision. I just think we probably get enough control time from Figueredo to kind of edge this one out on the scorecards. And I think more likely than not, as he often does, Cheeto's going to drop the first round. So it's just tough for me to back him here as an underdog. It does sound like a lot of sharp people are on him as the underdog here this week. Figgy getting up there in age, 36 years old, but I do think the move up in weight has been kind of nice rejuvenation for him in his career. He's looked great his last couple fights against Garbrandt and Fawn. Obviously, this is definitely a tougher matchup. But I think stylistically, if he does kind of lean on that wrestling, it's going to be a good thing. And I don't know if you caught this bit. He's actually spent some time with Khabib the past couple of weeks training, working on wrestling, which can only favor him even more. So I do think we see a good version of Vera here coming off that title fight. But historically, guys who drop title fights tend to underperform in the following matchup. So yeah, just I like Figgy here. I do think the line's a little bit wide to me. This is kind of close to a pick 'em, but of the three we talked about so far, I am more comfortable playing the money line on this favorite.
All right, yeah, I agree with really all of what you had said when it comes to breaking down this fight. Figueredo was favored by an even larger margin here early in the week. As it's now close to minus 150, that's probably about where I'm comfortable playing him. Again, I really, props to you on the breakdown for this one. As yeah, I think Figueredo, the path is going to be grappling Vera. Otherwise, it's very tough for this to be a convincing win for him. At striking range, he's had this power that's really, flattened guys, certainly down at flyweight. And that's not going to be the case facing Marlon Vera, someone who's so durable and has proven time and time again to be able to take this punishment and keep moving forward, keep pressuring opponents on the feet. Um, I think it's going to be very interesting in the early going, as you said, with Vera oftentimes starting slow. Which one of these guys sort of takes the lead there striking, and at what point Figueredo does look to bring this bout to the mat? Because yeah, it's a decisive edge grappling there. Dude's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. We've seen him coming off a submission win in his last fight. I certainly think that's going to be the clearest path for him getting the victory over Vera. And yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable if this goes to the scorecards and these two spend all 3 rounds standing and exchanging shots on the feet. Neither are known for having tremendous volume. So if it does devolve into one of those sorts of matches, I certainly wouldn't want to be holding those tickets on Figueredo. But yeah, he's been grappling lately, as you had stated, and I hope that continues here facing Marlon Vera today. I'll go with Figgy on that one. And now we could take a look at this matchup here at welterweight between Michael Chiesa, the minus 600 favorite, against El Kakui, Tony Ferguson. After boasting one of the best, unbeaten streaks in the UFC, Tony has now gone on a streak of 7 consecutive losses, with his last win in the UFC coming against Cowboy Cerrone in 2019. That last fight from Tony against Paddy Pimblett, not the worst showing, but it's clear. It's clear that this is the fight. If you can't get past Michael Chiesa in 2024, it is time to hang it up, Tony. I'm rooting for him here, and honestly, this is the stylistic matchup to do it. Chiesa is somebody who does not have the power on the feet to really hurt anybody, and yeah, I see this probably being contested as a grappling match. Chiesa's confident in his own grappling, not going to be intimidated, taking down Tony Ferguson, and I don't think Tony Ferguson's really going to resist in terms of that. He's going to be comfortable playing that jiu-jitsu game with Chiesa rather than take significant punishment. Obviously, Tony would like this fight on the feet as often as he can keep it there. His striking's way better than Chiesa. He still has power, even at the age of 40. But yeah, on the mat, I'm not going to count him out as this number would suggest. We've seen Ferguson, pull off a variety of submissions in the UFC, and certainly I rate Chiesa the better grappler, certainly a more formidable wrestler at welterweight than a guy like Tony Ferguson. But there's no reason to count Tony out of it at 4-1 odds, and I'm really tempted to play him again this weekend. So curious your thoughts. But really, who in the world is playing Chiesa at -600? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, maybe you take the inside distance and just don't pick a side. I think that's the way to go. I'm going to take Chiesa to win, mostly because of his size and just what we've seen from Tony lately. I mean, I've bought into the Ferguson propaganda more than once. And yeah, I just can't do it anymore, man. And it's tough because every single media day, Tony comes in. He says all the right things. He says, I changed my camp. I'm doing this better. I'm doing this. This time around, it's that I'm finally sparring. I've had 120 rounds. I feel great at 170 pounds. Chiesa came up as a 155er. I'm a true 170er. But the thing is, Chiesa, sure, he came up and he won Ultimate Fighter at 155, but he's really built into this frame now. And I think on fight night, once these guys weigh in, I mean, Tony's not cutting a ton of weight. Chiesa is, and Chiesa's going to be massive in there. I think he's going to get the body lock takedowns. I think Tony's going to be too comfortable kind of playing off his back. We saw that a lot of times in the Paddy Pimblett fight. And yeah, I mean, Chiesa does kind of have a bad habit of getting into scrambles where he shouldn't, leaving his neck out there. I mean, two of his last three losses came via Darce choke, and Tony has been called the Darce Knight for his ability to score that submission, but it's been years and years and years since we've seen that out of him. And yeah, I mean, both these guys far past their prime. I just think Chiesa probably closer to his. And I do think he's more of the true welterweight, even though these guys have kind of flip flopped weight classes throughout their career, which is kind of weird. But yeah, man, I mean, I don't fault anyone for taking a shot at Tony here at this number. I mean, again, just another fight where I think the books have the right favorite, but they're really not trying to, I don't know, lose any money on these favorites this week. I imagine I'm gonna wait to see this that most of the public money is gonna be on Tony here at 4-1, and the line hasn't moved all that much. Like I don't think anyone's laying this massive money on Chiesa. The line continues to widen. Not a guy I'd be parlaying at this price. Again, if I'm taking anything here, I'm looking now under 2.5 rounds, -110. I think that's probably where my money will go if I do end up putting anything on this fight. But yeah, just two guys who don't fight that often, who are way past their prime, super volatile. I just think the size difference here, and we'll see it at weigh-ins and face-offs, is going to be heavily in the favor of Chiesa. So yeah, I do like Chiesa here to get it done. He looked pretty good at times in that Brady fight before Brady got going. He was looking good early against Luque. And if you look at the last three opponents each of these guys had, Hollins, Brady, Luque, I think they all beat Tony. But then you look at Pimblett, Green, Diaz. I mean, Chiesa probably loses to Pimblett, maybe. I don't know. But I think he could beat Green or Diaz if he's grappling heavy. So it's really interesting. I just think Chiesa's not as far past his prime as Tony is. And I love Tony, man. It's just been so damn long. And I've made the mistakes so many times. And what do they say? Definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again. I'm going to have to go with Chiesa here. Not going to lay money on him at this massive money line price, but I do think he gets it done, probably leaning on his wrestling and grinding out a decision.
All right, we will move on now to a bout at women's strawweight between Mackenzie Dern and Lupita Godinez. Dern currently the -120 favorite in this spot, with Godinez the even money underdog. Lupi Godinez, she averages one takedown landed per round, and oftentimes it's her wrestling pedigree that ends up winning fights for her. But that's not really going to be an available asset here, facing somebody as talented on the mat as Mackenzie Dern. I think it's a very compelling matchup. Certainly at even odds, it's drawing a lot of attention. But an elite grappler like Dern, ADCC world champion, Nogi black belt world champion, somebody who sort of struggled to secure her own takedowns in the past. If she's getting this fight to the mat in any aspect, I'm going to favor her over Lupita Godinez. And in terms of doing striking as well, these past couple, fights we've seen out of her, it's been improved. And the recent losses as well aren't against the strikers. It's against the more superior grapplers or I'm sorry, the recent losses for Durand are coming against these elite strikers, whereas these grapplers, she is still able to outwork and get the win over. Godinez has no power in her hands, good boxing, good volume when it comes to her stand-up, but she's not really going to be able to hurt Durand or put her in any uncomfortable positions. And again, as soon as this hits the mat, whether by, Godinez's choice or by Durand able to secure a takedown of her own, she should have a significant edge in terms of the grappling. Her jiu-jitsu's levels above Godinez, and I think she's going to be able to control her, get on top, win minutes in this fight if she's unable to, submit her before that. Just to touch on as well, Godinez is very small, even for, this division. Dern's going to be bigger and, one would think stronger as well when these two do hit the mat. She's training too. Craig Jones Invitational grappling just a month away. Obviously, this fight takes precedent, but she's certainly looking to always implement, her jiu-jitsu on the mat, and I think that's what gets the win for Dern here.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I do think it's Dern. I think she's the side. I mean, not super confident just because she's been pretty damn inconsistent, but I don't know. I hate to play MMA math here, but I think I have to. I mean, we just look at what each of these girls did against what's her name? I'm completely Angela Hill. Okay,
So,
so Hill, I mean, really great performance against Loopy, kept the fight standing, picked her apart on the feet. And then Dern had maybe one of the best fights of her career against Angela Hill relatively recently. I think just over a year ago last May, where she looked excellent against Angela Hill for 5 rounds. I mean, the thing with Dern, I mean, not a great striker by any stretch. She can take shots though, and like you said, I don't think Loopy really has the power to keep her off her. I think we see a lot of this fight up against the cage, where Dern is going to find her back at times. And yeah, I mean, I've liked what I've heard from Dern's in terms, excuse me, can't talk, of media this week. I mean, just knows coming off 2 losses, she has to get a win here. Saying all the right things, and yeah, Loopy a little bit of inside info here, not inside info, I think it's well known, but her sisters are competing in the Olympics right now in wrestling, so she's not going to have her normal corner. She's missing, I think one of her sisters is always there with her. I think the other one has been at times, but definitely going to be missing that. And she did get kind of emotional talking about it. So yeah, I'm on Mackenzie here. I think she gets it done. I don't want to play too much MMA math, but just knowing what she did to Angela Hill and seeing what Hill did to Godinez, I mean, that's a big reason that I'm pretty confident in Dern. But like you said, I think if this fight does hit the mat, Dern's going to be the better jiu-jitsu player. I like Loopy's wrestling. I think she has the better wrestling here, but I think the size advantage is going to be enough for Dern to get into favorable positions if this fight does hit the mat. So as long as this isn't 15 minutes on the feet, I think Dern probably gets it done. And I do think there's value on her here near even money. But yeah, kind of go with Mackenzie.
yeah, and agree. A little steeper price, I'd probably still be picking her, getting her near even here. Seems like a play for me as well. Um, Great. Opening up the main card will be a lightweight scrap between Joel Alvarez and Elves Brenner. This should be a very fun matchup. Kicking off the card, which again will air from start to finish on ABC, starting 3 o'clock Eastern Time. This fight's interesting. I'm leaning Alvarez. I think he has the more complete striking arsenal. What we've seen out of Brenner on the feet's good, like his boxing. But Alvarez is going to have far better weapons. He's the far more sophisticated striker. And we should see a decisive advantage for Alvarez while this fight is taking place at range. Alvarez at lightweight is 6'3", and he has a 77-inch reach. 5 inches of reach, the advantage between Alvarez and Brenner. I think we'll be able to see him touch up Brenner on the feet. Probably not hurt him significantly, but as those shots continue to add up and Alvarez gains confidence in his fights, he tends to build, get better and better. Seems to suffocate opponents with his pressure when he has the confidence to move forward. And Alvarez has appeared a completely different fighter when on the back foot. So it is an interesting spot. Brenner, again, on the feet with his pressure, perhaps he'd be able to get Alvarez into some tough positions alongside the fence. But it's going to be the grappling that wins this fight for Brenner if he is able to do so. Alvarez is going to run into trouble if taken down. We've seen him struggle to get up from off his back before. Notably the fight against Arman Sarukian, but that's a top tier wrestler. Elvis Brenner is not quite that, but he is an experienced MMA grappler, and he does have 11 submission wins to his credit as a professional. Certainly, I think if able to take the fight to the mat and work those positions against Alvarez, the more compact guy too. Probably going to be tough for Alvarez to get up. Somebody who's already sort of a sieve in terms of his takedown defense. But on the feet, that advantage is about 180 odds in my opinion for Alvarez. So it's a close one. I may still end up flipping on this fight, but at least at this point in the week, my thought is going with Joel Alvarez. Someone I like, someone I think has a very high ceiling. Want to see him make the weight here at 155 pounds too before I go ahead and bet him. But yeah, I am going to lean that way.
Yeah, I'm on the other side currently, but I'm kind of with you in that I'm not 100% firm in it yet. I'll say this about Alvarez. I mean, he's massive, massive for the weight class. So the weigh-in matters a lot for this fight, particularly on the Alvarez side. I mean, you mentioned the height and the reach, but at the same time, when you're cutting that much weight, it can affect your cardio. And the one thing we've seen from Brenner, I mean, really in that Guram fight, also in the Oral By fight, which was a really narrow decision loss. Yeah, I mean, he can last for 15 minutes. His pressure is insane, and he does a good job kind of wearing on his opponent. So I think Alvarez wins the first round at a pretty high clip. But it's going to be a question of how does his weight cut go? How does he look on the scale? Does he make weight? Is he going to be able to keep that going for 15 minutes? In the Casey fight too, I think that fight played out a little bit closer initially than either of us expected. I think we're both on Alvarez there, but yeah, my initial lean's Brenner. I think he's the value side. I think he can kind of take over as this fight wears on, but that's heavily contingent on this weight cut for Joel Alvarez, who has been inactive, has had to pull out of a few fights. But when he gets in there and when he makes weight well, I mean, he is so big for a lightweight. It's definitely a tough matchup for pretty much everyone. But I've been really impressed by Elvis Brenner. I mean, I thought he kind of robbed Tukagov in that UFC debut, but since then, just been tremendous. I mean, took a lot of our money against Guram, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Just did what he was supposed to against Chusky or whatever his name is, and then, like I said, that Oral By fight.
I thought he had it. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
thought he
everyone's
had it.
super high in Oral By. It was very narrow. Is my only point. And yeah, I mean, these are guys who are both just outside of the rankings of lightweight, so it should be super competitive. So I am seeing some value on the underdog. But if Alvarez has a great weight cut, looks excellent, um, I mean, I don't know. I get him being the favorite, but right now I just think the momentum, even coming off a loss, is kind of on the Brenner side.
No, yeah, and the odds have swelled a bit further into Alvarez's favor too. So yeah, certainly don't blame you. Brenner is a live dog without a doubt. We'll look now at the preliminary portion of this card. This is a light heavyweight matchup between Azamat Mirzakhanov and Alonzo Menafield. I like Mirzakhanov. Thus far in the UFC, Mirzakhanov has gone 3-0. Very good southpaw striker. What we've seen out of him, he's able to kind of snipe these shots in. Not always the highest volume, but he really gets going in the early half of his fights. I like as well the big power in the hands and knees of Mirzakhanov, not only at range but along the fence. And positions along the cage, kind of grappling, winning minutes. That's oftentimes where I feel Alonzo Menafield wins many fights. He hangs well in that aspect of fights, clinching with guys, maybe on occasion finding a fight fall to the mat, but really just wearing on guys with his size, strength, putting them in those awkward positions against the fence. Menafield finds a lot of success in previous fights. But that's unlikely to be the case here, facing Mirzakhanov, who has those great knees, very effective in the clinch. We've seen as well the ability to get a hard 15 minutes out of Mirzakhanov. I really see him continuing to build as this fight goes on, finding more and more space between himself and Menafield. And as this becomes a kickboxing match, the advantage becomes super clear for Mirzakhanov in my eyes. Obviously, at light heavyweight, everyone has power. Menafield plus 170, not crazy at all. But I really don't think this is one of the spots where you see Menafield outwork a guy, end up winning a decision. I think it is properly priced. If he's going to win this one, I think he's going to need to catch Mirzakhanov, and I don't see that happening. So give me the Russian here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Mirzakhanov undefeated in MMA, has looked really solid so far in the UFC. Did fade a little bit in that Jacoby fight in the third round, but I mean, Menafield's really not some cardio machine or anything like that, so I don't think we have
And
to worry
Jacoby's
about that.
good.
What's that?
Jacoby's good. I mean, that's
Yeah,
not
I
a
mean,
yeah.
both these guys beat Jacoby, which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, Menafield at his best kind of relies on his athleticism. I think the better technical fighter everywhere is Mirzakhanov. Kind of a slow starter at times, so maybe you get a better price on him after the first round. I could see Menafield kind of keeping things close until Mirzakhanov kind of finds that shot. I mean, this guy is a sniper, really good counter striker, really does a good job kind of baiting his opponents into traps. But yeah, I just think all the technical advantages here are for Mirzakhanov, obviously in Abu Dhabi. He's going to have the crowd behind him as well as the Russian fighter. Both these guys getting up there in age, but you can kind of get away with it in these upper weight classes. But yeah, I mean, durability's been there for him, which is usually what you have to check when you take on a guy like Benefield with that power. So I think he'll be fine. And I think, I mean, Benefield comes in with big hooks. He'll probably land something down the middle, probably hit him with a 1-2 or a knee, like you mentioned. I mean, I could definitely see him scoring the KO. I also think if Benefield engages on the fence, that Mirzakhanov can kind of reverse those positions and find takedowns. Just think he checks a lot of the boxes here. I love the price. I will say this though. I mean, whenever you take on someone like Benefield, just those physical gifts make him someone tough to get too confident against. But I do think Mirzakhanov definitely checks more boxes than he does in this matchup. Certainly the rightful favorite and someone I'll probably have mixed into parlays here.
All right, we will look now at this lightweight matchup between Mohamed Yahya and Cale Fernandez. Fernandez minus 400 favorite in this spot against Yahya, who could be had at 3-1. Um, Yahya doesn't seem all that good. Obviously, getting the spot here on the Abu Dhabi card as he represents the United Arab Emirates, carries their flag out. We saw him here in this corner of the world last time he fought against Trevor Peek, and it was not a good performance from Yahya. We not only saw him, kind of getting touched up a bit, but also taken down multiple times by Trevor Peek. Never really a good look. Yeah, obviously a spot on this card for that reason and that reason alone. The level of competition has not been really the highest at all. Fighting UAE like Warriors and the likes of those promotions. But his striking is good. He's good from both stances. He's able to land big shots on his opponents. It's just Fernandez early in fights, very very powerful with his strikes as well, and also effective when it comes to taking fights to the mat. Not always his game plan, but he's somebody who has proven to mix it up in his 10-fight professional career thus far. Not someone also who's very talented or probably should be minus 400 against anyone. It's just after seeing Yahya taken down so easily by a guy like Trevor Peek, I figure Fernandez will be able to find similar success here. I think that's why the odds are where they are. And yeah, the Brazilian, whether it be by submission or just controlling Yaya over the course of these 15 minutes, I think it's going to be hard for the local guy to earn a win in this spot. But curious your thoughts if you're giving any love to the 3-1 underdog.
Yeah, I mean the price is tempting, I will say. But again, just another one of these fights where I think they got the right favorite. It's just a little bit inflated. I don't know if Yaya has the skills necessarily for me to want to take a shot on this underdog, though. Just a terrible grappler. I mean, when Trevor Peek is taking you down repeatedly and controlling you on the mat, that's a major red flag. And I think they were trying to get him a win in that spot. And yeah, I mean, he goes by the UAE Warrior. They're really trying to give him another fight he could potentially win, but I just don't see it necessarily. We haven't seen a lot in the UFC, but Fernandez does have a pretty good ground game, able to take fights to the mat, has wins via submission. I think that's his clear path to victory here. Unless he decides to just stand and trade, which I don't think he will, he should get this done. Um, Probably by decision. I mean, Yaya seems pretty durable. I can see a KO or submission as well. If I'm playing Fernandez at all, it's probably inside the distance. I don't necessarily have the confidence to get there, but I will say I'm not playing him into parlays around minus 400. That just seems absolutely insane. Yaya not very good, but Fernandez not very good either. And I think that's why this fight's even being made. So yeah, just two guys I'm really not that high on. I do think they got the rightful favorite, but like you said, Fernandez minus 400 against nobody, in my opinion, on this roster. So probably one I'll just stay away from.
Yeah, I mean the one thing with that as well, when you talk about Yaya's durability, he probably will be better if we see around three in this fight compared to Fernandez, being the local guy as well, not traveling the length that Fernandez does. I certainly think if you are playing Fernandez, that inside the distance play is a good look. I'm seeing minus 135 at current. That's much better than laying, minus 425. So one way to maybe play that matchup.
Okay.
We'll move on now to a bout at heavyweight. Shamil Gaziev, minus 250, here facing Don'Tale Mayes, who could be had at 2-1 odds. What are your thoughts here, this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, Shamil coming off that performance in which he looked good against Rosenstrike early and then completely faded, completely gassed, and essentially gave up and died in the fourth round. Yeah, I mean, good thing for him. This is a 3 round fight. Sounds like he's been working on his cardio extensively. And yeah, I mean, I just haven't been all that impressed by Don'Tale Mayes. Obviously, big guy, has some power in his shots, but really not all that great in terms of technical ability. I think Gaziev gets back in the win column here. This is another guy it seems they're trying to kind of put on this card for the home crowd. I think he gets it done. Not really worried about the cardio in a 3 round fight. And yeah, the one thing I'll say is, um, whenever you get these heavyweights that aren't at the top level, it's tough to get too confident in them here. These guys have just been super inconsistent. I mean, the heavyweight division is honestly terrible in the UFC right now. Like outside of the top 10, it's just brutal. Gaziev, a guy who's gonna float around that top 10. I mean, Mays is a guy who's somehow borderline ranked. It just really speaks to kind of the lack of depth in the division. But like I said, I mean, they had Gaziev in a main event against Rosenstrike. They're trying to build his name up. They don't have really heavyweights from this part of the world that they can kind of pump. And he's that guy for them. And I think Mays is a winnable fight. I mean, Mays has enough power to maybe score the upset. Obviously, it's heavyweight MMA, but I do think Gaziev, I mean, honestly, minus 250, this is one of the more reasonable lines in terms of the heavy favorites, just relatively speaking. Not excited to play him at this price, but I do think he gets it done. I do think he gets back in the win column here. A 3 round fight definitely favors him as well.
I'm with you on that one. It's very rare that I end up, picking Don'Tale Mayes. That last fight was good, getting the win over Kyle Machado. But yeah, a guy like Gaziev, I find it hard to see Mayes really finding a lot of prolonged success standing and striking from range. Gaziev is somebody who's going to be able to close that distance and apply pressure to Mayes, not really letting him work behind that 81-inch reach. Yeah, just Mays in the UFC, it's nothing that impressive. It's never somebody you want to rush to bet, even as, a juicy underdog. He's a guy with a negative striking differential and only landing 43% of his, strike attempts in the UFC. It's going to be difficult for him to find prolonged success here, facing a guy as physically built as Gaziev. And yeah, as you said, that Rosenstrike fight was quite a sweat. Looked like a ticket I would be ripping up, but Rosenstrike able to come through not until late. And yeah, that probably won't be the same opportunity provided here for Mays, because he should have the cardio to get through at least, a hard 12 minutes here and maybe throw away the last few to Mays. But otherwise, I think this is his fight. I like him in the spot. Think minus 250. Again, yeah, you mentioned the odds. If I could get 250 on Gaziev, I'd probably go play 210 on Mirzakhanov instead. But, heavyweights, it's always sketchy. Not someone I'm confident picking, but yeah, I'm not taking non-tail Mays. All right, and now we have a lightweight matchup here, looking at Guram Kutateladze facing Jordan Vucenic. Kutateladze minus 235 at current against Vucenic, who could be had at plus 190. This is a fight I'm very interested in. Not quite confident making a official selection yet, but Vucenic is kind of the lean for me. I think in terms of skill set, he's going to have a slight edge over a guy like Kutateladze, who does very well, is good everywhere, but just really doesn't excel in any particular areas. The one thing really giving me some pause to back Vucenic in this spot is the short notice nature of the booking. This is a fight at lightweight, and Vucenic traditionally fights at featherweight. The Cage Warriors featherweight champion, somebody who's been able to, look very good in that weight class, but not necessarily up facing a guy as big as Kutaladze, who had fought previously at 170 pounds. Um, I want to just see as well. Yeah, Vucevic, when it comes to his striking, it's going to be a more diverse attack and kind of more quick twitch movements than what we see out of Kutaladze, who's more content to stand and box. Vucevic quick with his kicks, very good striking. He's been staying ready too for the opportunity to move into the UFC. He's been waiting for the call and finally gets here kind of in a tough spot on short notice. So yeah, Kutaladze has had these very close fights, has not really proven to be able to go a hard 15 minutes. And in this spot against Vucenic, I could find him having a lot of difficulty if he's not able to just smother the guy, really close the distance, work his boxing, or take this fight to the mat. He would have the edge there over Vucenic. Vucenic capable with his jiu-jitsu, but not good at defending takedowns and wrestlers. It's just Kutaladze, despite what he may look like, he's not a guy that just shoots over and over and over again. That's not really his style. His takedown accuracy in the UFC is a mere 18%. So, while he's probably the rightful favorite in this spot, and I want to see weigh-ins and all that before I make the pick official, Vucenic is a live underdog and someone I'm seriously considering this weekend.
Yeah, Vucenic's one of these Cage Warrior guys I've had my eye on for a while. I mean, his last loss coming against Paul Hughes, who just signed with the PFL, a really good fighter, has wins over a guy in Morgan Charrier, who's had a lot of success at the UFC level. And in spite of that recent loss to Paul Hughes, he has a win over him as well. Really fun fighter. I mean, he strikes kind of out of a Muay Thai style stance. You mentioned kind of the fast twitch movements, which I agree with, but he does kind of throw really big kind of looping shots at times, which could be dangerous in a matchup like this. I'm curious to see how these guys kind of match up when they face off. I mean, Guram, when he came in, he had that fight against Gamrot, looked great. Got the win. I think everyone kind of agreed that was a robbery. Since then, pretty disappointing. And Guram did have a grappling match against Marcin Held, where he lost recently. And if this fight hits the mat, I do think Vucenic has type of jiu-jitsu that can maybe give him some trouble. So I'm with you, man. I think my lead right now is on the underdog. It's just with him moving up a weight class, with this being short notice, it's tough to get excited about him. And then the other thing is Guram, obviously close with Kamzat. I wouldn't be shocked to see Kamzat in the crowd here. A guy who this part of the world likes to back as well, definitely gonna have the crowd behind him. But yeah, I mean, if I'm looking for a heavy underdog on this card, it probably is Vucenic. I mean, when this line opened 225. I mean, it's hasn't really moved all that much, but really, really curious to see what these guys look at weigh-ins. Gurum's had some tough weight cuts in the past, and then I do want to see how these guys look when they face off. I think if they're close enough in size, I'd maybe go with Vucenic. And the thing with Guram, he always looks great early. We saw in the Brenner fight kind of started to fade as he wasn't able to find that finish. Vucenic has been super, super durable for the extent of his career. Young, athletic, definitely a prospect the UFC has had their eyes on for a while. Kind of like the dog shot on him here. Can't be confident in it, but I definitely think he's the value side.
All right. Well, that gives me confidence hearing you're thinking the same way. Love it. Next, a matchup at women's strawweight. Victoria Dudakova, the minus 175 favorite here, facing Sam Hughes. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Very similar to the last fight. I mean, I want to see how these two look when they face off. Dudakova, overrated in my opinion. Sam Hughes, excuse me, super underrated in my opinion. So maybe once again we get some good value on an underdog. Dudakova going to be the better technical fighter here. If this is a pre-fight at range, she's going to look good. Has shown an ability to kind of mix in takedowns, take fights to the mat, but I don't know, kind of fluky. I mean, coming off that fight where she had staff, didn't look great. In her debut against the Sled and Nunez, kind of that fluky finish where she kind of snapped her arm on the mat. And Hughes, I mean, you see the record at 8-6, it's really not that great. But she's a dog, and I mean, coming off a fight against Yurgi, where everyone kind of thought she'd get steamrolled. I mean, she clearly lost that fight, but she gave a really solid showing of herself. Showed well against Amorim too to kind of avoid submissions early in that fight, kind of take over and win on cardio. Dominant performance over Elise Reed. So yeah, I mean, the records tell two different stories, but I think there's some value on Hughes here as a result of it. Dudakova, I know she looks the part, but I'm not necessarily buying into it yet necessarily. I mean, she's a fighter for sure, but I don't know. She's a better hammer than a nail, and Hughes is the type of fighter who can kind of stretch things out, make them ugly in the late rounds. Dudakova win over Jinyu Fry, who's super small for the division. We mentioned the win over Nunez, or I did, where Nunez dislocated her elbow. The fight kind of ended immediately. That's kind of fluky in my opinion. And they had her booked against Gatto. Dudakova pulled out of that for a medical issue. Again, she's had issues making weight. She's had issues with staph infection. I don't know what the issue was with the Gatto fight that got called off. But yeah, just a lot of issues with this girl. And undefeated, I mean, more red flags than you usually see on an undefeated fighter with a few UFC wins under their belt. So again, if we're value hunting, we got a lot of big favorites on this card that are justifiable. Maybe Sam Hughes is one I find myself on. I want to spend a little bit more time kind of digging into her and her mindset and see if Dudakova looks healthy, maybe in better shape than we've seen her in the past coming into this one. I can see myself maybe landing on the favorite. But yeah, I was kind of thinking Dudakova would be a bigger favorite here. So I was kind of excited to play Hughes as the dog. They're only around plus 140, plus 130. It's okay. But yeah, I do kind of lead the underdog in this one.
All right, I'll be picking Dudakova, but I do agree that she seems overrated. I just think that Hughes is properly rated, and she's not very good. She is 8-6. You had mentioned that, but yeah, it's just no threat on the feet, very small, zero takedown defense. It's just somebody who I never really want to put my money behind. And yeah, she could take a punch. She's a dog. She's going to keep fighting 15 minutes, but that doesn't mean that she's going to end up winning. Dudakova on the feet, her striking looks good, nothing special, but I think she's going to be the better offensive wrestler here in this fight, and she's going to be able to take down Sam Hughes. I think that's sort of her path to victory. However, I have some pause betting her as well. Coming off that fight against Jinyu Frey, a win, but a fight that saw Dudakova taken down 3 times by a very small girl. So the grappling isn't super high level. I just think it's going to be enough to get past Sam Hughes. And honestly, I think her striking is enough to get past Sam Hughes too. I mean, higher level, at least in terms of what she's able to do, her kickboxing, better than what fourth Sam Hughes brings. And certainly in terms of the powerful shots or more accurate shots landing, they're going to come from the side of Dudakova. So, yeah, not a fight I'll probably be betting on at all, but Dudakova is going to be the pick for me. I think the rightful favorite. All right, we will now look at a lightweight matchup between Jai Herbert and Rolando Bedoya. Herbert, the minus 140 favorite in the spot, against Bedoya, who could be had at plus 120. These odds have closed a bit over the course of the week. Herbert was more significantly favored as the week opened, and some money has came in on Bedoya closing these odds. I think Rolando Bedoya is going to be the pick for me as the slight underdog. Herbert, I would rate as the better technical striker, but I do expect this to be largely a kickboxing match. And as these two are exchanging shots, we've seen Bedoya putting forth much higher volume than Herbert has over the course of his career. Bedoya is 9 years younger than Jai Herbert. He should have the much better gas tank. And in both previous UFC performances thus far, Bedoya has landed more than 100 significant strikes, thrown nearly double that. But yeah, just what we've seen out of him. This is also his first fight at lightweight. He looks to be in incredible shape after fighting both previous UFC appearances at welterweight. Perhaps that means he won't have the cardio to be throwing out and landing 100 significant strikes. But I wouldn't see why that to be an issue, especially with him dropping these pounds and getting down to 155 pounds. Herbert, good, again, better technical striker. It's just if more shots are landing for Bedoya over the course of 15 minutes, or if he sneaks in 1 or 2 shots that hurt Jai, That's going to be a big difference in this fight. I trust the kid's boxing, and Herbert's just never somebody I've rated super high. Seeing him getting close to pick 'em odds here, it's tempting. But yeah, I think Bedoya is still enough juice here as the underdog and somebody who I think should have a slight edge in what's going to be a very competitive striking battle.
Yeah, this is a tough one to call for sure. First and foremost, you mentioned it, Bedoya coming down a weight class, the guy who kind of never really appeared to be in shape at 170 pounds. He looks great coming into this fight. I think this is his natural weight class where he should be. But interestingly enough, I mean, even coming down a weight class, Herbert's going to have the reach. He's going to have the height. He's going to be the bigger fighter here, which I find interesting. Um, the reason this is so tough is like we've seen different versions of both these guys, right? Bedoya debuts against Chaos Williams. I think that was more a poor Chaos Williams performance than it was a great Bedoya performance. But going into that song fight, I mean, everyone thought Bedoya would look great. He looked terrible. Jai Herbert, I mean, Ludovic Klein, one of the fighters on the rise in this division now, fought him to a really close majority draw. Then he comes out and looks kind of flat against Farazim. So two guys who are generally inconsistent, which makes it a tough fight to call. Currently, I'm kind of siding with Jai. I mean, I don't know. Excuse me. I've just been more impressed by him, generally speaking. I mean, everyone's really putting a lot of weight into what they saw from Bedoya in that Williams fight. But like I said, I mean, Bedoya came in with nothing to lose. He was really swaggy in there against Williams, and Williams, for whatever reason, was just completely flat that night. So I don't know. I mean, a lot of people put so much weight into that performance going into the next fight. Then he looked terrible. It's like I just don't know what version we're going to see of him here. And I mean, yes, he's in incredible shape, but it's not like he's going to be massive for the weight class or anything. So just a really tough fight to call between two super inconsistent fighters who can look amazing when they're on point, terrible when they're not. Current lead is Jai Herbert, but another fight I'm probably going to have to spend a little bit more time on. I will say this though, obviously Bedoya is going to put out way more volume. I think Herbert definitely lands the more powerful shots, and he definitely has the better striking defense. So it could come down to is it volume or is it damage? And yeah, I mean, this kind of has split decision written all over it, in my opinion. Just a really tough fight to call. So I don't fault anyone for just taking the dog shot on what kind of feels like a coin flip. Currently, kind of leaning the Herbert side, but really tough fight to call. One of the tougher ones on the entire card.
All right. We'll now look at this last fight of our breakdown, a matchup at middleweight between Cedricus Dumas and Denis Tululin. Dumas minus 235 in the spot against Tululin, who could be had at plus 190. This bout was scheduled for June before Dumas had to pull out due to a visa issue getting over here. Um, if Dumas is ever going to win a fight in the UFC, again, it's going to have to start with this one. Yeah, it's going to have to start with this one if he's going to be beating anyone. I mean, the guys he's got wins over, it's, as Aitar, they're good. They're good performances. He's got to get past Tululin here. Tululin's somebody that we just saw finished in 3 straight fights. Somebody with 0 ground game, no ability to defend takedowns of his own, and not a threat to take down his opponent. This is someone Dumas should feel comfortable striking with, kickboxing with. We haven't really get to see Dumas put, his hands on incredible display thus far. I don't think he's anything that special either. But he's had a much better camp to prepare for this matchup with Denis Tululin. Tululin, somebody who's, a power threat on the feet, but just what we've seen, his ability to take damage recently, his, ability to stay competitive in fights for more than 5 minutes, it's just not there. And again, Dumas is somebody who has this trajectory. He could be a staple and, have another 10 fights in the UFC. But if you can't beat Denis Tululin, I don't really think he belongs here. I think he's the rightful favorite in the spot, and I think he gets the job done using his striking and finding a finish at Tululin, within the first couple rounds here. This is the fight where we should see Dumas display his striking more. And if not, the guy has shown very good fight IQ. I mean, honestly, he'd be able to win a decision here against Tululin if it's not a situation where he just, ends up cruising. So yeah, I like him to open the card.
Yeah, I mean, I could honestly see Dumas taking this fight to the mat, maybe working for a submission. The thing about Dumas, I mean, raw in his abilities, really not super gifted anywhere, but he is very athletic, even for the division at 185 pounds. Super fast, long rangey striker, does work well behind his jabs when he's fighting at his best. And yeah, he's coming off a loss to Ruzaboyev, but he got poked in the eye like 5 times. They never called it. Just kind of a weird result there. So I'm not going to put too much into that. Prior to that, coming off 2 wins, solid wins over Zaitar and Brundage. Obviously, not great fights to watch. But this guy is finding ways to win against the worst in the division, and I put Tallulah in that category. Tallulah's only win, kind of opposite of what Dumas just dealt with. KO over Jamie Pickett, where he was kind of hitting him in the groin multiple times, had a few stoppages in that fight for fouls. So I don't know. I mean, we got Contender Series right around the corner. Seems like they're going to continue to cut a few guys. We had a bunch of cuts this past week. Tallulah coming off 3 losses, definitely another guy who's probably going to get cut from the roster unless he can secure a win in the spot. He is a Russian fighter, but certainly not home with any sort of fan base or steam. Dumas, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think just being this athletic, maybe he could continue to show major improvements. He is focusing on MMA full time now, which wasn't the case when he started his career. So I like him. I think he gets it done, probably inside the distance. But again, I mean, this is a very low level matchup. You probably shouldn't have too much money on either side here. But yeah, feels like a fight Dumas should win, get back in the win column, especially coming off of full camp. Initially willing to take this fight on short notice, which tells you his camp thought it was a fight he could probably win on short notice. So on a full camp, even more reason to like him here. I do think Dumas gets it done.
All right, Nick, and I am with you there. Should be a good card here this Saturday. UFC uh, Abu Dhabi, Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov. Thank you all, as always, for joining for our breakdown of these fights. Come Saturday morning, check out our full write-up with official predictions of each of these bouts. Nick, as always, thanks for joining and breaking these down with me. And take care, everyone.